Imagine this. You step out into the world and the air itself seems heavy, thick with an unseen weight that presses on your chest like 1,000 invisible hands. Everywhere you turn, shadows lurk in conversations, subtle venom in smiles, a creeping malaise weaving through the fabric of daily life. The people around you, once light and animated, now carry a darkness you cannot quite place. It is not merely sorrow or disappointment. It is something far more insidious, a pervasive negativity that threatens to consume not just your surroundings but your very sense of self. How do you respond when the world around you feels like a theater of despair, where every scene is scripted with cynicism and every actor plays a part steeped in bitterness? Do you push back, hoping your light might shatter the gloom? Or do you retreat inward, hoping to shield yourself from the toxic currents that threaten to drown you? Perhaps you try to ignore it, pretending the negativity simply doesn't exist, that if you avert your gaze long enough, the darkness will dissolve into the mist. But therein lies the paradox. The more you ignore the negativity that surrounds you, the more you become its prey. The shadows grow bolder, slipping through cracks in your walls, infiltrating your mind. And yet, direct confrontation often feels like a hopeless battle, a war you are destined to lose because negativity is not just external. It feeds, mutates, and thrives on resistance. Fighting it head-on can make it more potent, turning your defiance into fuel for its fire. Now, pause and consider. What if the way we have been taught to confront negativity is itself flawed? What if the instinct to fight or flee is precisely what negativity exploits to gain dominion over us? What if surviving, and even flourishing, in a world soaked in this pervasive darkness requires a cunning beyond mere willpower or optimism? This is no simple question of attitude or mindset. It is a question that gnaws at the roots of power, control, and human nature itself. Negativity is not just an emotional contagion. It is a force, a strategy, a weapon wielded effortlessly by the currents of society and the whispers of those who seek to dominate. It shapes alliances, fuels resentment, and corrodes trust. To face it unarmed is to invite defeat. Yet here is the unsettling truth. Negativity is inextricably entwined with life itself. It is the shadow cast by desire and ambition, the dark backside of hope. Without it, you cannot recognize what you cherish, nor can you grasp the urgency of your own existence. Negativity is the soil in which the seeds of resilience and strength take root. This makes the challenge all the more complex. How do you remain unbroken and untainted within a world where negativity is the default environment? Imagine waking up one day and realizing that the negativity which once threatened to engulf you was, in fact, a shape-shifting guardian, a harsh but invaluable teacher disguised as your enemy. Imagine if instead of recoiling, you confronted it with a different kind of gaze, not one seeking to banish it, but to understand and harness it. Not to become a victim or a martyr, but a strategist, a master of the very realm that sought to imprison you. What would that change in you? What would it transform in the way you see the world and yourself? Would you become cold and ruthless, a figure draped in cynicism and manipulation? Or would you find a new kind of freedom, an unshakable inner citadel impervious to the corrosive forces that claim so many before you? This is the tension that lies at the heart of the matter, a tension that Machiavelli, the master of power and pragmatism, understood better than most. His writings do not offer comfort or false hope, but a brutal clarity that strips away the naive layers of idealism and exposes the raw mechanics of influence and control in a world rife with hostility. He challenges you to acknowledge the battlefield you inhabit, to recognize the players and their hidden agendas, and to craft your own strategy not with blind courage or wishful thinking, but with cold calculation and self-awareness. It is not a prescription for embracing cruelty or despair, but a call to transcend them, to outmaneuver the negativity that seeks to claim you by mastering it. But how do you begin such a transformation? How does one turn the toxic environment of incessant doubt, criticism, and resentment into a forge of power and resilience. Can you truly remain humane and compassionate when surrounded by venom and spite? Is it possible to be both pragmatic and morally anchored in such a corrosive atmosphere? These questions are not academic, they are existential. They ask you not only to reconsider your relationship with the negativity that haunts your social and professional realms, but to confront the very essence of your being, your will to live not as a passive passenger, but as a commanding presence steering through stormy seas. And as you ponder these unsettling paradoxes, you might feel the stirrings of something rare and profound, a hunger for mastery over yourself and your environment that no amount of easy answers can satisfy, a hunger that demands a deeper dive into the art of navigating darkness without losing your light. So, what do you do when negativity surrounds you? What path do you take when every whisper, glance, or gesture seems saturated with disapproval and despair? How do you carve out space for your own vision, your own purpose, without becoming a prisoner of the very forces you seek to evade? The journey ahead is neither simple nor comfortable. It requires shedding illusions and embracing truths that many avoid at all costs. You must learn to see negativity not as an enemy to be destroyed, but as a landscape to be understood, a terrain where power is won not by brute resistance but by subtlety, insight, and sometimes ruthless necessity. This is not about sinking into despair or cynicism. It is about rising above the chaos in a way that changes the rules of the game itself. It is a challenge that calls for both courage and cunning, both heart and mind, both shadow and light. And it begins with a single step, recognizing the nature of the storm you face. Only then can you begin to chart a course through it, a course that Machiavelli himself might envy. The question now is, are you ready to take that step? With this unsettling invitation hanging in the air, let us move deeper into the landscape where negativity thrives and learn the first truths about how to disarm it, not by denial or confrontation, but by strategy. The path ahead will reveal the tools and insights necessary to transform your relationship with the darkness that surrounds you, redefining your power in ways few dare to imagine. Imagine for a moment that the negativity which hems you in is not some external enemy, an airborne contagion to be purged or a virus to be exiled. Instead, suppose it is a reflection, one that your mind desperately tries to wrestle with but never quite escapes. This shadow you perceive in others, this pervasive gloom saturating your surroundings, is also embedded within you, in the tangled labyrinth of your psyche. Carl Jung, who probed the depths of the unconscious, might call it the shadow, the unacknowledged, often despised part of ourselves that we project outward onto others in hopes it will disappear. But such projections never vanish. They only materialize in the world's mirror. The negativity you see, then, is as much a signal from within as from without. Why does this happen? Why does darkness so readily seek you out like a predator scenting blood? Part of the answer lies in human nature's intricate architecture, an architecture Nietzsche dissected with scathing precision. He posited that behind the veil of civilized veneers lies a fundamental will to power, a restless striving that drives human behavior. Yet this drive is neither purely noble nor entirely base. It is a primal force that can twist into bitterness or malevolence when thwarted or ignored. Negativity is, at times, the expression of this thwarted will. Others, attempts to assert control or reclaim lost status by dragging those around them into the mire. It is a battle not of ideals, but of raw, unrefined urges battling for dominance in the social arena. But it is more than a mere struggle for power or recognition. Schopenhauer, that ever-pessimistic philosopher, illuminated a darker dimension beneath our desires. Suffering is woven into the very texture of existence. His concept of the will as an insatiable, blind force means that dissatisfaction is the default human condition. Negativity emerges not just from external sources, but from an internal wellspring of frustration, resentment, and existential pain. This spirals outward, infecting interactions and creating an environment where despair and hostility become normalized. The world, then, is not simply negative because people want to harm you. It is negative because the human condition itself is marked by an unrelenting tension between desire and disappointment. And yet, this endemic negativity does not merely affect mood or interpersonal dynamics, it reshapes identity. Jean-Paul Sartre's existentialist insights are stark here. Negativity presses upon you so relentlessly, it threatens to define you. When surrounded by scorn, envy, or cynicism, the risk is that you absorb these energies, allowing them to creep beneath your skin and rewrite the story you tell about yourself. The gaze of others, saturated with judgment or malice, is a kind of force field that imposes a script upon your being. It is as if your selfhood is at risk of being hijacked, morphing into a fragmented echo of the collective bitterness that envelopes you. Sartre warned that to be looked at by others is to be objectified. Negativity intensifies this objectification, reducing you to a repository for their own failures and fears. Yet this oppressive atmosphere is not just an interpersonal trap, it is a symptom of wider societal currents. Aldous Huxley glimpsed a civilization veering toward conformism and despair, where mass media and public opinion manufacture a shared malaise that dulls resistance and breeds submission. Negativity thrives when society cultivates alienation and distrust, transforming human connections into battlegrounds of suspicion. The individual becomes isolated amid crowds, vulnerable to the invisible pressures of social narratives steeped in fear and resentment. In this sense, negativity is woven into the very fabric of collective existence, an unintended consequence of technological progress and cultural evolution that fractures communities even as it connects them superficially. If you listen carefully beneath this cacophony, Viktor Frankl's profound experience emerges like a beacon, not as naive hope, but as a revelation forged in the crucible of unimaginable suffering. Even when the world around you collapses into bleakness, even when every voice lifts a chorus of despair, you possess the power to locate meaning that transcends the negativity. Frankl showed that human beings are not helpless victims of circumstance. They are meaning makers who can assert freedom in the face of oppressive forces. But this freedom is neither granted nor lightly claimed. It must be seized with an iron will and a clarity of purpose that cuts through the fog of despair. What then are the consequences of succumbing to or resisting this negativity? The stakes are immense, for it is a war for your very soul, your capacity to act, and the narrative you live by. The hidden force of negativity is insidious because it erodes willpower slowly, like water wearing down stone. It seeps into your emotions, blurring the lines between who you are and what others project onto you. It alters choices, shrinks possibilities, and dims the internal flame that propels creation, joy, and courage. Left unchecked, it can calcify into a form of spiritual paralysis, an existential standstill where resentment and fear become both shield and prison. Yet the paradox deepens. To understand the machinery of negativity is not to become its servant, but to learn its rules, to anticipate its moves as Machiavelli counseled. The challenge is to dissolve the illusion that negativity is an alien force separate from the self or the world. It is rather a complex dance of psychology and social forces that can be deconstructed, resisted, and even turned to your advantage. But first, recognition and comprehension must pierce the veil. The darkness around you is not amorphous chaos. It is structured, patterned, and predictable, and therein lies the possibility of mastery. So what happens when you begin to wield this knowledge, when the shadows no longer intimidate but instruct? The answer is not yet visible, but the path to it demands more than awareness. It demands courage, strategy, and a profound reckoning with the truths most would rather evade. As the chilling weight of negativity presses closer, consider this. To navigate such terrain is to engage in a battle of perception itself, where victory goes not to brute force but to those who can bend, adapt, and outthink the storm. The deeper consequences, your fate, your freedom, hang on this subtle, brutal contest. And now, as the pressure mounts and the landscape of negativity reveals its true shape beneath the surface, the question is no longer why it exists or how it came to be. The more crucial inquiry awaits. How do you respond when the darkness is no longer a distant threat but an immediate presence, suffocating and unyielding? This next step will pull you into the heart of Machiavellian strategy, where insight becomes power and survival demands a new kind of clarity. The shadows creeping around you are not random. They are the byproduct of subtle forces unfurling beneath the surface of consciousness, weaving the fabric of your inner world and the society that surrounds you. You might believe that negativity is a tempest pounding from without, but the real tempest rages silently within the architecture of the mind itself, where cognitive biases act as invisible architects, crafting realities not aligned with truth, but with survival, fear, and conditioned response. Have you ever paused to consider how often your judgments and feelings are preordained by mechanisms far beyond your immediate understanding? This is not an accusation of ignorance, but an urgent invitation to witness the machinery quietly scripting your perception. Observe the mind's relentless dance with negativity. The negativity bias, a pernicious cognitive trait, has tethered human consciousness to the dark, like a moth eternally circling a flame that sears rather than illuminates. Negative stimuli, threats, failures, losses, are processed with greater weight and velocity than their positive counterparts. This is not happenstance. It is an evolutionary echo designed to keep our ancestors alive in hostile environments. The problem in the modern world is that this bias doesn't discriminate between existential threats and social slights, between genuine dangers and imagined slanders. It amplifies the whispers of doubt, the echoes of criticism, magnifying them into roaring torrents that flood your mind. Every slight misstep becomes a catastrophe. Every shadow of doubt becomes a chain shackling your resolve. The neurological underpinnings of this are etched deep in the amygdala, that primal hub of emotion and fear. When negativity breaches your awareness, the amygdala fires with relentless urgency, triggering stress hormones that scramble rational thought. This cascade disrupts the prefrontal cortex, that precious seat of reason and problem-solving, which only moments before was poised to guide you toward calm and clarity. Instead, your mind is hijacked, flooded with signals that poverty, rejection, and failure are imminent, and suddenly, your capacity for strategic thinking falters. The very biology designed to protect you becomes the trap that imprisons you. And here lies the cruel paradox. Your own brain, the instrument you rely on to discern truth, betrays you by elevating negativity above all else. It constructs a reality skewed, a prism through which the world is forever tinged with shades of threat and loss. What does this mean for the choices you make, the relationships you foster, the risks you dare to take? Every decision is subtly but inexorably influenced by this neurological bias toward the negative, shaping not just personal outcomes but cascading outward to mold the collective psyche. The society you navigate daily, its fears, its conflicts, its divisions, is a mirror held up by countless individual minds trapped in this same neurochemical quicksand. But cognitive bias does not act alone. It allies with cultural conditioning, layering another invisible force upon your experience of negativity. Culture, with all its norms, stories, and rituals, teaches you what to fear and what to expect from the world, and often, these lessons are cloaked in pessimism and dread. From childhood, you absorb messages that amplify the dangers lurking under every decent surface. The fear of failure as shame, the suspicion of others as survival necessity, the cynicism that whispers the futility of hope. These inherited scripts program you to anticipate adversity, reinforcing the grip of negativity within the collective. Are you truly free to envision a path beyond these confines? Or are you unknowingly bound by a system that insists misery is the natural order? The complexity deepens when you realize that this entire mechanism, bias, biology, culture, functions not as an isolated quirk but as a vast network of contagion. Negativity is viral, spreading quietly through conversations, social interactions, and digital echoes. It seeps into relationships as doubt and distrust, infiltrates workplaces as morale decay, and permeates societies as polarization and despair. Each person ensnared becomes an amplifier, a node of transmission in the unseen epidemic of negativity. And the more pervasive it becomes, the more it validates itself, creating a cruel feedback loop that tightens like a noose around collective potential. You can feel the weight of this not just as a threat to your personal peace, but as a dire structural vulnerability in the fabric of human civilization. It plays out in the fracturing of communities, in the erosion of empathy, in the mounting despair that silently fuels unrest and apathy. The trap is no longer simply psychological or individual. It is systemic and societal. How many movements for change have faltered? How many hopeful futures have withered because this silent contagion whispers, "You cannot win, do not try." And yet, its power depends entirely on remaining unseen, unchallenged. Once illuminated, the trap becomes navigable, its strings exposed for what they are. This is the urgency pressing down on you. To awaken from the illusion that negativity is an external force beyond your control, to recognize the invisible architecture that sculpts your experience and the world's, and to break free from the hypnotic pull that drags you into despair. But escaping this labyrinth is not a simple matter of positive thinking or blind optimism. It demands a confrontation with the mechanics of the mind, a rigorous examination of the forces that have long held you captive. You stand at the threshold of a profound reckoning where awareness alone is a weapon, but only the first step. If you do not wrestle with this hidden structure, you are condemned to wander deeper into its maze, a pawn in a game played by unseen powers. If you fail to see how the gears turn, how the synapses fire and the narratives bind, you surrender your agency to a cycle that thrives on unconscious acceptance. Yet within this challenge lies a paradoxical promise. Knowledge of the trap is the key to escape, but that key demands courage and precision to wield. The moment you acknowledge the intricacies of this invisible prison, the possibility of rewriting the rules, of seizing control, pulses faintly on the horizon. So, what must you ask yourself now? Does the weight of negativity crush your spirit because you have inadvertently fed it your attention, surrendered your reason to its biological tyranny, and accepted the cultural scripts that codify despair? Or is there a deeper, untapped reservoir of strength beneath this surface, a vantage point from which the machinery of negativity can be understood, dismantled, and transformed? Your mind is the battleground, your soul the prize, but victory is neither guaranteed nor easy. It is forged in the relentless refusal to accept what seems inevitable and in the ruthless clarity to see beyond the shadows painted on the walls of your mental cave. As these forces swirl invisibly around and within you, the question lingers, insistent and raw. How long will you remain a prisoner of a reality shaped by unseen biases and conditioned fears before you decide to challenge the very foundation of the darkness? The breakthrough you seek hides not in denial or distraction, but in a precise confrontation with the truth of your own susceptibility. Awakening that begins with recognizing the silent architects of your mind and the collective narratives that bind you. Only then can the path emerge from the murk, but that, for now, remains just beyond reach, tantalizing and imperative. What if the very thing you have sought, comfort, clarity, peace, has been the ballast that chained you deeper into negativity's relentless grip? This is not a mere philosophical tease, but a radical upheaval of everything you trust about your instincts and intentions. Imagine that the natural recoil you feel from the dark, the despair, the cacophony of doubt that surrounds you, is precisely the mechanism that hands over your power to the architects of your suffering. What if the instinct to resist negativity, to avoid those shadows like a plague, only corrodes your agency further, leaving you more vulnerable and more captive? This paradox is where true liberation begins, in embracing the chaos rather than fleeing it, in wielding the darkness as a blade and a shield instead of a curse. Niccolo Machiavelli would have seen this at once, not as a romantic defeat but a pragmatic opportunity. The prince who does not fear the storm is not naive. He is master of the winds. And so must you become. But how? First, dismantle the illusion that negativity is an external force imposing itself upon you without consent. It is not a storm to be outrun, but a fire to be kindled with intention. When negativity clouds your mind, your soul does not shrink. It signals an invitation to transform. The emotional turbulence you perceive as assault is, in fact, raw material, a forge for a new kind of power. This is not comfort you seek, but dominion over discomfort. This is not avoidance but strategic engagement. Look historically at those who rose unshaken amid ruin. Think of Marcus Aurelius, who chronicled how to wield one's reason like a sword even when surrounded by chaos and betrayal. He did not flee from the relentless pressures of his time, but remade the storm into his ally. Or consider Queen Elizabeth I, whose reign was encircled by threats and venomous court intrigues. She did not plead for peace or succumb to despair. She played the game of power with ruthless intelligence, turning suspicion into strength and paranoia into policy. These were not beings insulated from negativity. They were its masters, engaging with it so fully that they rewrote the rules of their reality. What if you could do the same? What if the cloud of negativity is not a barrier but a lens, through which the hidden contours of true power become visible? To reclaim control is to shift your perspective from victim to architect. Instead of recoiling, lean in. Instead of resisting, negotiate. Instead of hiding, wield your awareness as a weapon and a shield. Paradoxically, this means surrendering your desire to be unaffected. The desire to be untouched by negativity is your undoing, for it assumes control resides outside you. Instead, acknowledge that discomfort and darkness are inevitable, but how you inhabit them defines your sovereignty. This shift is not about suppressing pain or forcing optimism. It is about radical acceptance coupled with ruthless agency. You accept the storm's presence but refuse to be drowned by it. You learn to dance inside the tempest, your movements deliberate and precise. This is not self-help fluff. It is a Machiavellian blueprint for spiritual warfare, and it demands a new vocabulary. Not "I feel bad, therefore I am victim," but "I feel bad, therefore I see an opportunity to reshape my domain." It demands an emotional alchemy that transforms despair into resolve, confusion into clarity, fear into calculated boldness. This alchemy is no mere happenstance. It can be practiced, refined, and perfected. How? Start by reframing every negative impulse as a signal of where power can be reclaimed. Envy, frustration, anxiety. These are not failures of character, but indicators of what you value deeply and where your boundaries are violated. Instead of numbing or denying them, interrogate their message. What is the hidden currency behind your agitation? What unspoken rule does it illuminate? With each question, you colonize more territory within your mind, wresting control back from the insidious whispers of defeat. Consider the example of Nelson Mandela. Imprisoned, isolated, surrounded by seemingly endless darkness, he did not allow the negativity of his circumstances to decree his identity. Instead, he internalized the suffering and transformed it into a formidable reservoir of strategic patience and resilience. His negativity was not a cage but a crucible. Through conscious reframing and relentless commitment to purpose, He emerged not broken but exalted, turning his personal agony into the liberation of a nation. You too can harness this logic. The negativity around you is not an external enemy but a mirror, a map, and a mentor. It reveals cracks in your psyche, fissures in your worldview, and shortcuts to deeper wisdom. When you stop fearing these revelations, you unlock the possibility for unprecedented growth. This radical shift demands that you cease being a passive recipient of emotions and become an active editor of your internal narrative. This transformation is the revolution you seek, from being buffeted by circumstance to commanding your inner reality with Machiavellian precision. Your mind becomes the court at which every thought, every feeling, is tried and judged ruthlessly. The goal is not bland optimism but strategic mastery, knowing when to wield kindness, when to deploy cold logic, when to embrace paradox, and when to cast aside convention. But beware of falling into comfortable cynicism. The mastery of negativity is not nihilism. It is a dance with darkness, yes, but a dance that honors the light you choose to create within the shadows. The power you reclaim is not forceful domination over others but sovereign leadership over yourself. That leadership demands courage to face what is ugly and painful, and the cunning to turn that into an asset rather than a liability. As Machiavelli might say, it is not enough to survive the storm. You must learn to command its fury. To do this, you must discard the naive binaries of good and bad, hope and despair, and instead cultivate a third space, the realm of strategic agency where you are neither victim nor prisoner but ruler. So now, standing at the crossroads of your internal battlefield, envision a new paradigm, one where negativity no longer dictates the terms of your existence, but becomes a resource you deploy with calculated vigor. This is no longer the passive pain you have known, but an active force you harness. Your mind is no longer a prison. It is your empire. And in this empire, negativity is no longer a plague, but a tool, raw, jagged, and dangerous, to be shaped by your will. The question arises again, sharper and more urgent. Will you remain shackled by despair, or will you rise to become the prince of your own mental realm, wielding the power that only those who confront darkness unflinchingly can claim? The choice, as always, is yours. But remember, the path to mastery lies not beyond the storm but through it. What if I told you that the very shadows casting their weight across your soul are not the enemy you imagined all along? That negativity, far from being a curse, a mark of suffering, or a sign of moral weakness, is in fact the soil from which your deepest power sprouts. It's a cruel joke of existence. The poison you swear to flee is the catalyst that can ignite your transformation. But this alchemy demands a radical reinterpretation, a rupture with every comforting myth you've ever accepted about pain, despair, and the nature of human experience. Consider this: the world you traverse daily, the one that seems so permanently tainted by hostility, disappointment, and decay, does not exist apart from you. It is a mirror, shattered and flawed, yes, but a mirror nonetheless. To blame the mirror for the fractures is to deny your own reflection. Negativity surrounds you not by chance but as a necessary counterpart, the unseen current against which your ship gains direction, speed, and shape. You have been trained to recoil, to resist, or to be crushed, but what if the true mastery lies in the embrace of what opposes you? In the theater of power, as Machiavelli might intimate, weakness is the refusal to acknowledge the full spectrum of reality. Strength arises not from selective vision but from the courage to see what others cannot endure, the flicker of chaos beneath order, the rot beneath beauty, the void beneath substance. This is the paradox of power. It does not come from sanitizing your world but from the ruthless acceptance and utilization of its darkest elements. To master negativity is to stop shrinking from its presence and instead welcome its brutal lessons, for in its depths lies the blueprint of resilience itself. You must understand that negativity is not a foreign invasion but an intimate voice within your psyche, a signal that something primal is awake inside you. It is the raw awareness of your limits, betrayals, failures, and fears unmasked. This awareness, once embraced, is the forge where your character is reshaped. Imagine a blade tempered not in peaceful waters but in fire and hammer, bruised, bent, and scarred until it becomes something indestructible. Your mind, battered by negativity, is not a broken fortress but an anvil being readied for your will's imprint. But here is the deepest revelation. The narrative you tell yourself about negativity, about suffering, hostility, and despair, is itself a choice. You can choose to see it as a punishment or as a summons, as a chain or as a call to arms. The world does not impose meaning upon your experience. You carve meaning from it with the edge of your perception. This truth shifts the entire battlefield. When negativity encircles you, it no longer holds sway because you have redefined the rules. You become the sovereign who dictates how the game of existence unfolds in your mind. This shift is terrifying because it frees you from victimhood but demands accountability of a relentless kind. It requires you to step into the arena every morning, naked before your own contradictions and shadows, and declare, "I am the master of this chaos." It means that the external assaults lose their final power when they cannot penetrate the fortress of your internal resolve. It also means the gratitude for serenity is deeper, because it is earned through fire, not gifted through naivety. Look back now on your past struggles, the despair that seemed endless and the negativity that felt like a suffocating fog. Do you see the hidden pattern? Those moments were not merely obstacles but the shaping hands of fate, molding your capacity to wield power with wisdom rather than brute force. Pain was not a detour but the main road. The darkness was not the enemy but the lantern guiding you to a realm beyond simple binaries. You have been invited all along to enter a state of being where you no longer plead for light, but become it yourself. The grand paradox remains. Light defines itself against darkness, but darkness is powerless without light to reveal it. By reframing negativity as the essential contrast to your flourishing, you transcend it entirely. Negativity no longer has the power to erode you because you have internalized the truth that neither joy nor suffering exists independently. Each is a facet of the same diamond. The mastery is not the absence of negativity, but the artistry of dancing within it, unbroken and unbowed. So now, standing on the cusp of this profound insight, ask yourself, how will you wield this understanding? Will you cling to the hope of an unblemished existence, forever a prisoner of fortune's kindness? Or will you, like the prince Machiavelli described, seize the tempest and bend it to your design, becoming a sovereign not only of circumstance but of your own soul? This is no longer a question of survival. It is an invitation to ascend beyond the spectacle of pain and despair into a realm where you author the narrative of your own becoming. Imagine a life where the echoes of negativity are not chains, but the rhythmic drumbeats of your own march toward greatness, where every wound is a scar inscribed with the story of battles won, the battles fought not against others but within yourself. You are no longer the passive recipient of external forces, but the architect of a destiny that embraces chaos and order alike. And in this truth, in this profound acceptance and command of your internal empire, lies an eternal paradox. By surrendering the illusion of control, you gain the ultimate form of it. By welcoming the darkness, you illuminate your path. By mastering negativity, you become not merely a survivor of the storm, but the storm itself, a force that reshapes the world, beginning with the kingdom within. So heed the call, not as a plea for mercy from the relentless tides, but as a summons to rise, to transform, to lead. Your reign begins within the shadows, where light alone cannot reach. Step forward, prince of your own mind. The empire awaits.